The GBA is one of my all-time favorite consoles. With an iconic, pocketable form factor and an expansive library of games, I'm still finding ways to enjoy it, over 20 years after its release. And with so many different options to revisit that library, it can be easy to get wrapped up in finding the perfect way to play it. But the truth is, so much of the handheld experience is wrapped up in the hardware you played on, and the best option is going to be different for each person. So today, I'm going to run through my favorite ways to play GBA, why I picked them, and what makes each of them great. Before you start whipping out your wallet, look around your room, check your drawers, and dig through your garage to see if you've got a DS Lite hanging around. This was my GBA standby for years, and it still remains a great option. With a clamshell design, rechargeable batteries, a built-in backlight, and perfect compatibility thanks to its built-in GBA hardware, it's an accessible and fuss-free way to revisit old titles. As a bonus, it plays, DS games. Audio output is clean, if a bit low volume at times, but that can be fixed by pairing it with the right earbuds. The only real downsides are the aging hardware can make it a little harder to find good condition units, and the older screen and slightly higher resolution means there's a slight ghosting, and the image won't fill the screen without stretching. The DS might not have the fidelity of modern options, but it's an off-the-shelf solution with nearly every feature you want, with minor compromises and zero setup. If you want something modern but closer to the original experience, a modded GBA can't be beat. I prefer an original model GBA since it's less cramped than the SP. With a new lens, an IPS screen, and custom shells, you can get a unit looking nearly like new, with an image that easily outdoes the DS. And of course, it has perfect compatibility and integer scaling. The biggest drawback by far is the price. The components for modding are reasonable alone, but quickly add up, especially if you want options like rechargeable batteries or a fixed and noisy GBA headphone jacks. Power consumption rapidly becomes an issue as you add additional mods or use a flash card. At one point I thought I bricked my console, but turned out it was a combination of the increased power usage of my flash card combined with a new screen that was simply drawing more power than the depleted batteries could put out. Even with those hassles and drawbacks, when I need that uncompromised, perfect compatibility, this is my personal favorite way to play GBA. Modern screens might give an experience closer to emulation than the slightly blurred, washed out colors of unmodified hardware, but it looks so good, it's hard to really make a fuss about it. If you're lucky to live in a place where you can access professional modding services through Etsy, eBay, or otherwise, you can buy a pre-modded GBA for not too much more than it costs to build it yourself, and save yourself the anxiety of trying not to break anything in the process. I got mine from Game Changer Mods in New York, and they've got tons of fantastic custom colorways, and Greg was prompt and quick in making adjustments and sending the unit back and forth. Honestly, it was easily worth what I paid for it, but it's difficult to recommend this option for anybody other than the most particular players. If you're not going for original hardware, emulation is the easiest and best option. There's a bit of a preconception that emulation is inherently and noticeably worse, but with over 20 years of emulator development, emulation has progressed to the point where, with the right hardware and software, it's near indistinguishable from the real thing. The process itself introduces some inherent latency, but unless you're playing a rhythm game or you're a speedrunner attempting frame-perfect tricks, you probably won't notice. In return, you get an incredible suite of features and flexibility. For my money, MGBA is hands down the best out there, with incredible accuracy and robust features that I didn't even know I wanted. Tuned correctly, performance was even consistent enough for me to play games with tight timing like Rhythm Heaven. It can't make me good at them though. I do have to shout out Visual Boy Advance, which hit early and paved the way for a lot of future efforts. Back in the day, I was legit emulating games as I kept current with physical releases, thanks to VBA. When I need a pocketable GBA emulator, to me, the Anbernic 351P is the only option. The 351P has just enough power to run MGBA smoothly, with low latency, and just as importantly, has a screen that matches the GBA's 3:2 aspect ratio at a perfect 2x integer scale. Basically, no other portable emulator can say that. The shoulder buttons are similar to those on a GBA SP, but with micro switches and a landscape form factor closer to the original GBA, as well as a good D-pad, 4 responsive face buttons, dual analog sticks that click in, secondary shoulder buttons, and a rotary volume wheel. The same factors that make it ideal for GBA compromise the other systems it can play, but it's generally still adequate otherwise. On top of accurate emulation, you can even configure it for save states, rewind and fast forward, and remap the controls as you please, which is a godsend in a difficult action game like Mega Man Zero. The biggest problem is how much work you have to do to get it up and running. It's not even worth using the stock firmware, and you might as well throw away the SD card it ships with, leaving you to flash a custom OS and load up your own SD card with ROMs, if you want to meet what I'd consider the minimum standard for emulation. No matter what firmware you go with, however, you'll be stuck with RetroArch, which is a miserable hassle to navigate even after you get over the learning curve. Quality control is hit and miss too. My first unit had its headphone jack come loose through regular use, and the replacements I was sent had the same issue even after I took extreme care with it. I ended up opening it up and resoldering the joints myself to repair it, which is something that should not be a required step. Personally, the 351P is still by far the best portable emulator in terms of features, form factor, and price, but it's up to you if all that work is actually worth it. Now, if price is no issue, and you somehow don't care about portable play on a handheld, the Mister project offers an incredible suite of alternatives to emulation. While software emulation still has it beat in terms of flexibility, accessibility, and diversity of options, a lot of the common conveniences are here, bolstered by an FPGA solution that emulates the system at a hardware level. It's probably one of the most accurate ways to play GBA, barring original hardware, and still cheaper than trying to get a GBA player running on a modern screen or modding a GBA into console form. There's a lot to love in the Mister's GBA core, from the infinite controller choices, micro adjustments you can make to the display and sound options, and even support for the same rewind, fast forward, and save states that you'd get elsewhere. And of course, access to a huge number of major consoles and computers up to the PlayStation era. You know, just a little bonus. By far my favorite feature is the 2-player GBA core. It's a bit of a pain to import and edit save data, but it's otherwise one of the fastest ways to get GBA multiplayer up and running without the need for 2 systems, carts, or link cables. There are so many ways to display the 2 screens, including outputting the second player to a separate screen. It opened up the possibility to easily play a lot of the multiplayer modes I never had the chance to check out. I legit brought my Mister to my local fighting game meetup and played loads of multiplayer GBA games, some for the first time. We tried everything from Sonic Battle to competitive Mega Man Battle Network, all with our own controllers and arcade sticks. And those are all my favorite ways to play GBA. Each of these is a great option, but don't get wrapped up in thinking that they're the only choices. Regardless of which way you choose to play the GBA, there's an incredible library to dig into, with ways to personalize the experience to fit exactly the life that you're living. The most important part is to get out there and play the damn games.